When Judge Michael Harrison sentenced murderers and terrorists, he thought he'd seen humanity's worst. But nothing prepared him for the evil living next door. An HOA president who would leave his 3-week-old premature daughter to freeze to death in a blizzard over noise complaints. Before watching full story, comment below from where you watching. Also like and subscribe for more stories. The screaming wind and swirling snow outside my courthouse window should have been my first warning that this Tuesday in February would change everything. But I was focused on a complex federal case, completely unaware that my 3-week-old daughter was fighting for her life in a blizzard because of one woman's unimaginable cruelty. My name is Judge Michael Harrison, and I've served on the federal bench for 15 years. I've sentenced murderers, drug dealers, and terrorists. I've seen the worst of humanity walk through my courtroom. But nothing prepared me for the evil that lived in my own neighborhood, masquerading as an HOA president named Karen Mitchell. 3 weeks ago, my wife Rachel gave birth to our daughter Lily after years of trying to conceive. At 38, Rachel had endured 3 miscarriages and 2 failed IVF attempts before finally carrying Lily to term. The pregnancy was difficult from the start, with Rachel on bed rest for the final 2 months due to complications. Our baby girl was born 6 weeks premature, weighing only 4 pounds 2 ounces. She was tiny, fragile, and absolutely perfect. The moment I first held Lily in the NICU, her tiny fingers wrapped around my pinky, I knew I would do anything to protect her. After years of heartbreak and loss, she was our miracle baby, our answered prayer, our everything. Her little face was so peaceful, so innocent, completely unaware of how hard she had fought just to exist. Lily spent her first 2 weeks in the NICU, fighting to develop her lungs and gain weight. The doctors and nurses became like family to us during those long days and nights. We watched every breath, celebrated every ounce gained, and prayed constantly that our tiny fighter would grow strong enough to come home. The NICU was filled with other premature babies, and we saw both miracles and heartbreak during our stay. Dr. Sarah Chin, the head of pediatrics, became our guardian angel during those difficult weeks. She explained that premature babies like Lily had to work extra hard for everything: breathing, eating, maintaining body temperature. "She's a fighter," Dr. Chin told us as Lily passed her 5th pound. "But she'll need extra care and attention for several months. Premature babies are more vulnerable to infections, temperature changes, and respiratory problems." The doctors finally cleared Lily to come home just 5 days before the incident. Rachel and I were both nervous and excited to finally have our daughter in our own house. We had spent months preparing the nursery, installing the best baby monitors, and reading every book about caring for premature infants. Rachel was still recovering from a difficult C-section that had required additional surgery when complications arose during delivery. We lived in Maple Ridge Estates, an upscale community with perfectly manicured lawns, tree-lined streets, and strict HOA rules that promised to maintain property values and community standards. The neighborhood was known for its beautiful homes and excellent schools. We thought it would be the perfect place to raise our miracle baby, a safe haven where Lily could grow up surrounded by responsible, caring neighbors. Our house was a 2-story colonial with cream-colored siding, black shutters, and a circular driveway lined with rose bushes. Rachel had spent months decorating the nursery with pink butterflies, soft clouds painted on the ceiling, and the most comfortable rocking chair we could find. Everything was perfect and ready for our little princess. But we didn't know about Karen Mitchell, and we had no idea that our dream neighborhood was about to become our worst nightmare. Karen was a 55-year-old woman with steel gray hair always pulled back in a severe bun and the coldest brown eyes I'd ever seen. She was tall and thin, with sharp features and a mouth that seemed permanently set in a disapproving frown. She lived in the largest house in our community, a massive brick mansion that looked more like a fortress than a home. The house sat on a corner lot with perfectly trimmed hedges forming a barrier around the entire property. As HOA president for 7 years, Karen ruled our neighborhood with an iron fist that would make dictators proud. She had created over 300 rules and regulations that covered everything from mailbox colors to the exact height grass could reach before facing fines. Her rule book was thicker than most legal documents I'd seen in federal court. Karen had never married and had no children of her own. Neighbors whispered that she hated families, especially those with young children. She viewed children as nothing more than sources of noise, mess, and property value reduction. She had successfully driven 4 families out of the neighborhood in the past 2 years through constant harassment, impossible fines, and systematic intimidation campaigns that bordered on stalking. The Patterson family had been forced to sell their home after Karen fined them repeatedly for their twin boys' bicycles being visible from the street. The Rodriguez family left after Karen called immigration services on them multiple times, despite them being American citizens for over a decade. The young Chin family moved away after Karen made their lives so miserable with noise complaints about their toddler that they couldn't afford the accumulated fines. Our trouble with Karen started on Lily's very first day home from the hospital. Rachel was carefully carrying our sleeping baby from the car to the house, moving slowly because she was still in pain from her surgery. Lily was wrapped in a soft pink blanket that my mother had knitted, and Rachel was being extra cautious with every step. Karen appeared at the end of our driveway like some evil fairy from a children's story, materializing with her ever-present clipboard and measuring tape. She was wearing a gray suit and had a stern expression that immediately made Rachel nervous. "Excuse me," Karen said coldly, blocking Rachel's path to our front door. "I need to inform you of the noise ordinances regarding infants in this community." Rachel, exhausted from weeks in the hospital and still recovering from major surgery, stared at Karen in complete disbelief. "She's a newborn baby. She weighs 4 pounds. Children under the age of 18 are subject to strict noise restrictions between the hours of 8 p.m. and 8 a.m., Karen continued, reading from her clipboard in a monotone voice. "Excessive crying, screaming, or any other disruptive sounds will result in fines starting at $50 per incident. Repeated violations will result in escalating penalties and possible legal action to remove the disturbance from the premises." "You want to fine us because our premature baby might cry at night?" Rachel asked, her voice shaking with exhaustion and disbelief. "She just came home from the NICU. She's trying to learn how to eat and breathe properly." "Rules are rules, Mrs. Harrison," Karen replied with a cruel smile that never reached her cold eyes. "This is a respectable community with standards. Your personal circumstances don't exempt you from following our regulations. Welcome to the neighborhood." That night, as if the universe was testing us, Lily had her most difficult evening since coming home. She was struggling with feeding, something common in premature babies, and cried more than usual. Rachel and I took turns trying to comfort her, walking the floors and singing lullabies. We were both exhausted, but we knew this was normal for preemie babies adjusting to life outside the hospital. At exactly 6 a.m. the next morning, we found a bright yellow fine notice taped to our front door for disturbing the peace with excessive infant noise between the hours of 11 p.m. and 4 a.m. The fine was for $50, and it included a photo timestamp showing that Karen had been outside our house in the middle of the night, documenting our baby's crying. Rachel broke down sobbing when she saw the notice. "She can't fine us for having a baby? This is completely insane. What kind of person does this to new parents?" I was furious but tried to stay calm for Rachel's sake. As a federal judge, I dealt with difficult people every day, but this was different. This was personal, and it was targeting my vulnerable family during one of the most challenging times of our lives. I wanted to march over to Karen's house and give her a piece of my mind, but I knew I had to be careful about how I handled the situation. Over the next 2 weeks, Karen's harassment became relentless and increasingly cruel. She seemed to take pleasure in making our lives as difficult as possible during a time when we should have been bonding with our new baby and recovering from the trauma of her premature birth. Karen would stand outside our house at all hours with a professional sound meter, documenting every time Lily cried. She issued fines for our baby stroller being visible from the street, claiming it violated the clean aesthetic standards of the community. She fined us for receiving too many medical supply deliveries, saying that frequent deliveries were disruptive to neighborhood tranquility. She even fined us for having our nursery light on past 10 p.m., claiming that excessive lighting violated community standards for energy conservation. But Karen's cruelty went far beyond fines and citations. She would deliberately ring our doorbell during Lily's scheduled nap times, claiming she needed to inspect for violations. When Rachel would answer the door holding our sleeping baby, Karen would speak loudly and insist on examining our front porch for unauthorized decorations. She complained to the Postal Service that our baby's crying was traumatizing the mail carrier, and demanded that our mail be held at the post office instead of delivered to our home. The most devastating incident came when Karen called Child Protective Services with false reports of neglect. She claimed that Lily was underweight due to our failure to provide adequate nutrition, deliberately omitting the fact that our daughter was premature and under constant medical supervision. She also reported that our baby cried excessively, suggesting that we were either abusing her or incompetent as parents. The CPS visit was absolutely devastating for Rachel, who was already struggling with postpartum depression and anxiety about caring for a premature baby. A social worker named Janet Collins arrived at our home while Rachel was trying to nurse Lily, demanding to inspect our house and question our parenting practices. Janet was professional but thorough, examining our nursery, checking our medical records, and asking detailed questions about Lily's care routine. "I can see that you're loving, responsible parents," Janet told us after her investigation. "Your daughter is clearly well cared for, and her weight is appropriate for a premature infant under medical supervision." This complaint appears to be completely unfounded. Although the case was quickly dismissed and Janet even apologized for the intrusion, the stress of the investigation caused Rachel's milk supply to decrease significantly. The worry and anxiety affected her ability to breastfeed, forcing us to supplement with expensive special formula designed for premature babies. Rachel blamed herself for not being able to provide enough milk for Lily, adding to her emotional distress. "She's trying to destroy our family," Rachel sobbed after Janet left our house. "Why does she hate us so much? We haven't done anything wrong. All we want is to take care of our baby and be happy." I wanted to confront Karen directly and tell her exactly what I thought of her cruel harassment, but my position as a federal judge required me to be extremely careful about any actions that could be seen as using my authority inappropriately. I couldn't afford to give Karen any ammunition to use against me professionally or personally. Instead, I decided to handle things through proper legal channels, filing formal complaints with the HOA board and documenting every instance of Karen's harassment. But the HOA board was absolutely terrified of Karen and her retaliation tactics. She had been collecting information and dirt on every board member for years, using blackmail and intimidation to maintain absolute control over the community. Board members Tom Williams, Sarah Foster, and David Chin all privately admitted to me that they knew Karen's behavior was inappropriate, but they were too afraid of her to take action. "Karen has files on everyone in this neighborhood," Tom Williams confided during a phone call. "She knows about my son's drug arrest 5 years ago, about Sarah's affair, about David's tax problems. She uses this information to control us. We want to help you, but we can't risk her destroying our lives." The board refused to take any meaningful action against Karen, claiming her behavior was within her authority as president, and that noise complaints were legitimate community concerns. They suggested that we consider moving to a more family-friendly neighborhood if we couldn't adapt to the community standards. February 15th started like any other morning, with no indication that it would become the worst day of our lives. A massive winter storm was approaching the region, with meteorologists predicting 8 to 12 inches of snow and dangerous wind conditions. The National Weather Service had issued blizzard warnings, and the governor had declared a state of emergency, urging residents to stay indoors. Schools throughout the region were closing early, businesses were sending employees home, and emergency services were preparing for power outages and hazardous travel conditions. The temperature was already dropping rapidly, and the first snow flurries were beginning to fall around noon. I had to be in federal court for an important terrorism case that couldn't be postponed without violating the defendant's constitutional rights. The case involved national security issues that required immediate attention, and the judge scheduling system made it impossible to reschedule without significant legal complications. Rachel assured me she would be fine at home with Lily, and we had stocked up on supplies, baby formula, and batteries in case we lost power during the storm. "Just get home as soon as you can," Rachel said, kissing me goodbye while holding Lily against her shoulder. "The storm is supposed to hit hardest around 2 p.m., and I want you here before the roads get too dangerous." I promised to leave court the moment the hearing ended, no matter what other business was scheduled. Rachel was still weak from childbirth and exhausted from sleepless nights, but she was perfectly capable of caring for our baby for a few hours. We had backup plans in place, including phone numbers for our neighbors Mrs. Chen and the Johnsons in case of emergency. What we didn't know was that Karen had been watching our house like a predator for weeks, documenting our daily routines and waiting for the perfect opportunity to strike. She had noticed that I left early every morning for court and that Rachel was often alone with the baby during the day. In her twisted, evil mind, this weather emergency was her chance to rid the neighborhood of our problem family once and for all. While I was in court listening to testimony about terrorist threats and national security concerns, Karen was at home preparing to become a terrorist threat to my own family. She had spent weeks researching local ordinances and legal loopholes, looking for ways to force us out of the neighborhood legally. Her obsession had grown beyond simple harassment into a detailed plan for our destruction. Karen had discovered an obscure city ordinance that allowed HOA officials to remove health hazards from properties during declared emergency situations. In her warped interpretation of the law, she had decided that Lily's crying constituted a health hazard that was disturbing the mental well-being of residents during a stressful weather emergency. She had written detailed notes justifying her interpretation, complete with fake legal citations. She had also found a statute that allowed for temporary removal of individuals from properties during safety inspections, if dangerous conditions were present. Karen had convinced herself that our house was unsafe due to excessive infant noise that could prevent residents from hearing emergency broadcasts during the storm. She planned to use this as justification for removing Lily from our home. At 1:30 p.m., just as the snow began falling harder and the wind started picking up, Karen approached our house carrying an official-looking document she had spent hours creating on her computer. The fake emergency removal order looked legitimate enough to fool someone who wasn't familiar with legal procedures, complete with official-sounding language and fake government seals. Rachel was in the nursery trying to get Lily down for her afternoon nap when the doorbell rang. Our daughter had been fussy all morning, probably sensing the change in atmospheric pressure from the approaching storm. Rachel was exhausted from a difficult night and hoping to rest while Lily slept. When the doorbell rang, Rachel carefully placed Lily in her crib and went to answer the door, assuming it might be a neighbor checking on us before the storm hit. She was wearing comfortable clothes and had her hair pulled back, looking every bit the tired new mother she was. "Mrs. Harrison," Karen said formally, standing on our doorstep holding her clipboard and the fake document. "I'm here to execute an emergency removal order due to ongoing noise violations and safety concerns related to the current weather emergency." "What are you talking about?" Rachel asked, confused and tired. She had been hoping for a few quiet hours with Lily before the storm got worse. "Your infant has been creating a public disturbance for weeks," Karen continued, pushing past Rachel into our house without permission. "During this declared weather emergency, I'm authorized by City Ordinance 247.3 to remove the source of the disturbance for the safety and mental well-being of the community." Rachel tried to block Karen's path, but she was still weak from surgery and recovery. "You can't just come into my house. You have no right to be here. I'm calling the police." But Karen was beyond reason, beyond any normal human decency. She had convinced herself that she was saving the neighborhood from our disruptive family, and nothing was going to stop her from completing her mission. In her twisted mind, removing our premature baby during a blizzard was not only justified but heroic. What happened next still fills me with such rage that I sometimes can't sleep at night thinking about it. Karen walked straight to our nursery where 3-week-old Lily was sleeping peacefully in her crib, completely unaware that a monster was approaching. "You can't take my baby," Rachel said, panic rising in her voice as she followed Karen down the hallway. "This is insane. You have no authority to do this. Please just leave us alone." But Karen was completely deaf to Rachel's pleas. She had reached a breaking point in her obsession with control and power. This wasn't just about HOA rules anymore. This was about a woman who had never had children of her own, who resented families and happiness, and who had finally found a way to destroy what she could never have. "The ordinance is very clear," Karen said coldly, reaching into Lily's crib with her cold, heartless hands. "Disruptive elements must be removed during emergency situations to protect the welfare of the community." Rachel tried desperately to stop her, grabbing at Karen's arms and begging her not to touch our baby. But Rachel was still weak from surgery and no match for Karen's determination and larger size. Karen pushed Rachel aside and picked up our tiny helpless daughter, who woke up and began crying at being handled by a stranger. Lily was wearing a pink onesie with little elephants on it and was wrapped in the soft blanket my mother had knitted. She looked so small and fragile in Karen's arms, and I can't bear to think about how confused and scared our baby must have been. "Please don't do this," Rachel begged, following Karen toward the front door as the snow began falling harder outside. "She's only 3 weeks old. She was born premature. She'll die in this cold. Please, I'm begging you, don't hurt my baby." Karen ignored Rachel's desperate pleas and walked to the end of our driveway, where she had parked her large black SUV. Rachel thought Karen was going to put Lily in the vehicle, which would have been kidnapping, but at least our baby would have been warm and safe. But what Karen did next was so evil, so unthinkably cruel, that it still haunts my nightmares and fills me with murderous rage every time I think about it. Instead of putting Lily in her car, Karen placed our newborn baby on the snow-covered ground at the end of our driveway and walked back to her vehicle. Our 3-week-old daughter, wearing only a thin onesie and a small blanket, was left lying in the snow as a blizzard began to rage around her tiny, helpless body. Then Karen got in her SUV and drove away, leaving our premature baby to freeze to death in a snowstorm. Rachel screamed in absolute horror and ran toward Lily, slipping and falling hard on the icy driveway in her desperate panic to reach our baby. She scrambled on her hands and knees, crying and praying as she crawled the last few feet through the snow and ice. When she finally reached Lily, Our daughter's lips were already turning blue from the cold, and her tiny body was shaking uncontrollably. Lily's breathing was shallow and rapid, and her skin felt ice cold to the touch. Rachel scooped our baby into her arms and ran back to the house as fast as she could, slipping again but managing to keep Lily safe against her chest. Once inside, Rachel immediately called 911 while trying to warm our daughter with her own body heat. "My baby was left outside in the snow," Rachel sobbed into the phone, her voice breaking with terror and desperation. "She's 3 weeks old and she's freezing. Her lips are blue and she's barely breathing. Please send an ambulance right now." The 911 operator stayed on the line, giving Rachel instructions on how to gradually warm Lily while emergency services responded. "Remove any wet clothing and wrap her in dry blankets. Hold her against your skin for body heat, but don't use direct heat like heating pads or hot water." The paramedics arrived within 8 minutes, but it felt like hours to Rachel as she held our tiny daughter and watched her struggle to breathe. EMT Sarah Rodriguez and her partner Mike Thompson had treated hypothermia cases before, but never in a baby so young and small. "How long was she outside?" Sarah asked as she quickly assessed Lily's condition. "Maybe 5 or 6 minutes," Rachel cried. "That woman put her in the snow and drove away. She just left her there to die." Mike was already preparing the warming equipment while Sarah gently took Lily from Rachel's arms. Our daughter's body temperature had dropped dangerously low, and she was showing clear signs of severe hypothermia. Her breathing was labored, her heart rate was slow, and her skin had a grayish color that terrified everyone present. "We need to get her to the hospital immediately," Sarah said, working quickly to stabilize Lily for transport. "Her core temperature is critically low, and hypothermia in premature infants can be fatal very quickly." The ambulance ride to the hospital was the longest 10 minutes of Rachel's life. She held Lily's tiny hand while the paramedics worked to keep our daughter stable. Mike called ahead to the emergency room, alerting them to prepare for a hypothermic infant. Dr. Sarah Chin, the same pediatrician who had cared for Lily in the NICU, met us at the emergency room. Her face was grave as she quickly examined our daughter, and I could see the concern in her eyes as she assessed the damage. "Lily's core temperature is 89 degrees, Dr. Chin explained to us as the medical team worked around our baby. "Normal for a newborn is around 98 to 99 degrees. She's in severe hypothermia, and her breathing is significantly compromised. We need to warm her gradually to avoid shock to her system." Lily was immediately placed in a specialized incubator with warming lights and breathing assistance. Her tiny body looked even smaller surrounded by all the medical equipment fighting to keep her alive. Monitors beeped constantly, tracking her heart rate, breathing and body temperature as the medical team worked to save her life. "Will she be okay?" Rachel asked through her tears, holding my hand so tightly that her knuckles were white. "The next 24 hours are absolutely critical," Dr. Chin said gently but honestly. "Hypothermia in premature infants can cause serious complications, including brain damage, organ failure, and respiratory collapse. Her lungs are particularly vulnerable because she was already born with underdeveloped respiratory function. We're doing everything we can, but I need you to understand how serious this situation is." While our daughter fought for her life in the NICU, the police began investigating what had happened to her. Detective Maria Santos, a veteran officer with 20 years of experience and 2 children of her own, was assigned to the case. "In my 20 years as a police officer, I've seen drug dealers, murderers and child abusers," Detective Santos told me when I arrived at the hospital still wearing my judge's robes from court. "But I've never seen anything like this. Who deliberately leaves a newborn baby outside in a snowstorm? This is attempted murder, plain and simple." Our neighbor, Mrs. Chin, had witnessed part of the incident from her kitchen window and immediately called police after calling 911 for the ambulance. She provided a detailed statement about seeing Karen take Lily from our house and place her in the snow before driving away. Security cameras from the Johnson family's house had captured the entire horrific incident on video. The footage clearly showed Karen entering our house without permission, emerging with Lily in her arms, placing our baby on the snowy ground, and driving away without looking back. It was crystal clear evidence of breaking and entering, kidnapping, child endangerment, attempted murder, and a dozen other charges. The video was so disturbing that even experienced police officers had difficulty watching it. Detective Santos told me later that several officers had to leave the room when they saw Karen placing a newborn baby in the snow and walking away. Karen was arrested at her home 2 hours later, while Lily was still fighting for her life in the hospital. When police knocked on her door with an arrest warrant, She was calmly drinking tea in her living room and watching the local news coverage of the severe weather emergency that was affecting the region. "I was protecting the neighborhood from a chronic disturbance," Karen told the arresting officers without showing any emotion or remorse. "That baby was a constant source of noise pollution, and during an emergency situation, disruptive elements must be removed for the safety of the community." When Detective Santos asked Karen if she understood that she had nearly killed a 3-week-old infant, her response was so chilling that it's been burned into my memory forever. "Sometimes sacrifices must be made for the greater good. That family needed to learn their place in this community, and now they have." Karen showed no emotion as she was handcuffed and placed in the police car. She acted as if she had simply resolved a minor neighborhood dispute rather than attempted to murder an innocent baby. "Our daughter spent 6 agonizing days in the hospital, fighting complications from severe hypothermia that nearly killed her. The cold exposure had caused her premature lungs to become severely inflamed, making it even harder for her already underdeveloped respiratory system to function properly." Dr. Chin explained that Lily had suffered from cold stress, a life-threatening condition where a baby's body temperature drops so low that it affects all major organ systems. Her heart rate had become dangerously slow, her blood sugar had dropped to critical levels, and her body had begun shutting down non-essential functions to preserve core organs. "Premature babies have very little body fat to protect them from temperature changes," Dr. Chin told us during one of our daily meetings. "Even a few minutes in freezing conditions can be life-threatening for an infant Lily's size and age. The fact that she survived the initial exposure is miraculous, but we're not out of danger yet." Rachel and I took turns staying by Lily's incubator 24 hours a day, watching every breath and praying that our miracle baby would survive this nightmare. The warming lights cast a pink glow over her tiny body, making her look even more fragile and vulnerable than she had in her first days of life. On the 3rd day, Lily developed pneumonia as a direct complication from the cold exposure. Her oxygen levels dropped dramatically, and she had to be placed on a mechanical ventilator to help her breathe. The sight of our tiny daughter connected to all those machines, fighting for every breath, broke our hearts into a million pieces. "She's a fighter," the NICU nurse, Jennifer Martinez, told us as she carefully adjusted Lily's ventilator settings. "Preemie babies are much stronger than they look. She survived her first few weeks of life, and she's going to pull through this too." But privately, Dr. Chen was more cautious about Lily's prognosis. She explained that cold-induced pneumonia in premature infants had a mortality rate of over 30%, even with the best medical care available. The next 48 hours would determine whether Lily would survive without permanent damage to her brain, lungs, or other vital organs. "I don't want to give you false hope," Dr. Chin told us honestly. "Lily is fighting the battle of her life right now. Her body is working incredibly hard to recover from trauma that would be challenging for a full-term baby, let alone a premature infant." While Lily fought for her life, the legal system began to respond to Karen's unthinkable crime. As a federal judge, I had to recuse myself from any involvement in the prosecution, but I made sure that the district attorney's office understood the full severity of what had happened to our family. Karen was charged with attempted murder in the 1st degree, child endangerment, assault, breaking and entering, kidnapping, and impersonating a government official. The fake, emergency removal order she had created was evidence of additional fraud and forgery charges that could add years to her sentence. Her bail was set at $500,000, an amount she couldn't afford even after liquidating her assets. She remained in county jail, where other inmates had already learned about her crime through news coverage. Child abusers are universally despised in prison, and Karen was immediately placed in protective custody for her own safety. "This is one of the most heinous and senseless crimes I've prosecuted in my 20-year career," District Attorney James Walsh told the media during a press conference. "To deliberately endanger the life of a premature infant during a blizzard shows a level of cruelty and callousness that's almost incomprehensible. We will be seeking the maximum penalty allowed by law." The community response was swift and overwhelming. Neighbors who had been afraid to speak out against Karen's tyranny for years finally came forward with their own stories of harassment, intimidation, and abuse. The local news stations were flooded with calls from residents sharing their experiences with Karen's reign of terror. Mrs. Eleanor Thompson, a 78-year-old widow who lived 2 houses down from Karen, revealed that Karen had been systematically stealing her prescription medication deliveries for over a year. When Mrs. Thompson tried to complain, Karen threatened to have her declared mentally incompetent and forced into a nursing home. The Wilson family shared their heartbreaking story of how Karen had deliberately poisoned their beloved golden retriever, Max, because he barked when children walked by their house. They had been too afraid to report it because Karen had threatened to destroy Mr. Wilson's small landscaping business through false complaints to city regulators and licensing boards. Young couple David and Jennifer Park told police that Karen had been illegally entering their house for months, rearranging their belongings and leaving threatening notes because they were an interracial couple. Karen had told them that mixed relationships were inappropriate for a respectable neighborhood and that they should find somewhere more suitable to live. The Martinez family revealed that Karen had been calling immigration and customs enforcement on them repeatedly, despite the fact that they were third-generation American citizens who spoke perfect English. Karen had told them that people like them didn't belong in an upscale neighborhood and that she would continue reporting them until they moved away. On the 6th day of Lily's hospitalization, something beautiful and miraculous happened. Our tiny fighter began to show real signs of improvement. Her breathing became stronger and more regular, her heart rate stabilized, and her body temperature returned to normal ranges. Dr. Chen was cautiously optimistic as she examined Lily's progress during morning rounds. "Her lungs are clearing up much better than I expected," Dr. Chen told us with the first genuine smile we'd seen from her all week. "Her oxygen levels are improving steadily, and she's starting to respond more actively to stimuli. Her reflexes are getting stronger and her color is much better. I think we're finally past the worst of it." Rachel cried tears of pure relief as she watched Lily's tiny fingers curl around her pinky finger. Our daughter was going to survive Karen's attempted murder. She was going to live and grow and laugh and play, despite everything that evil woman had tried to do to her. But the trauma of nearly losing our baby had taken a severe toll on our entire family. Rachel developed serious postpartum depression, made much worse by the stress and guilt of almost losing Lily. She blamed herself for opening the door to Karen, for not fighting harder to protect our baby, for not seeing the danger sooner. "I should have known she was dangerous," Rachel sobbed one night as we sat beside Lily's hospital crib. "I should have protected her better. I let that monster into our house and she almost killed our baby. What kind of mother am I? How could I let this happen?" I held my wife close, knowing that Karen's evil had damaged our entire family, not just our precious daughter. The woman who had terrorized our neighborhood for years had finally gone too far, but the emotional and psychological scars she left would take a long time to heal. Karen's trial began 3 months later, when Lily was finally healthy enough and we were emotionally strong enough to focus on seeking justice. The evidence against Karen was absolutely overwhelming: security camera footage showing her taking our baby and abandoning her in the snow, hospital records documenting Lily's life-threatening hypothermia, testimony from dozens of neighbors about Karen's pattern of harassment and escalating violence. But Karen showed no remorse whatsoever during the trial. She sat in the defendant's chair with the same cold, emotionless expression she had worn when terrorizing our neighborhood for years. She stared straight ahead, showing no reaction to testimony about our daughter's near-death experience. When Prosecutor Assistant District Attorney Lisa Chang asked Karen why she had endangered a newborn baby's life, her response shocked everyone in the courtroom. That family was systematically disrupting the peace and tranquility of our community. The infant was a constant noise disturbance that was affecting the mental health and property values of law-abiding residents. I was protecting the greater good of the neighborhood from selfish people who refused to control their disruptive child. "Ms. Mitchell," Lisa Chang said, her voice filled with disgust, "you left a 3-week-old premature baby outside in a snowstorm. She could have died from hypothermia. Sometimes difficult decisions must be made for the greater good of the community," Karen replied without showing any emotion. "I followed proper procedures according to emergency ordinances, and I have no regrets about protecting my neighborhood from disruptive elements that were lowering everyone's quality of life." The courtroom was silent except for the sound of several people crying. Even the judge looked stunned by Karen's complete lack of remorse or understanding of what she had done. The jury deliberated for less than 2 hours before returning guilty verdicts on all charges. The evidence was so overwhelming and Karen's lack of remorse so obvious that there was no question about her guilt. Judge Patricia Williams sentenced Karen Mitchell to 25 years to life in prison for attempted murder, plus additional time for kidnapping, child endangerment, breaking and entering, and the other charges. At 55 years old, it was essentially a life sentence. "Ms. Mitchell," Judge Williams said during sentencing, "in my 30 years on the bench, I have never encountered such callous disregard for human life, especially the life of an innocent infant. Your actions were not those of someone protecting a community. They were the actions of a dangerous predator who nearly murdered a helpless baby out of petty spite and control issues." As the bailiffs led Karen away in shackles, she turned to look at our family one last time. Instead of remorse or regret, I saw only bitter resentment in her cold eyes, as if we were somehow to blame for her crimes and her punishment. Today Lily is 8 months old and thriving beyond our wildest dreams. She's a happy, healthy baby who loves to laugh and play with her toys. Her favorite activity is sitting in her bouncy chair and giggling at the colorful mobile that spins above her head. She has the most beautiful smile that lights up our entire house, and her laughter is the sweetest sound in the world. The doctors say she shows no lasting effects from her exposure to the cold, though we continue monitoring her development closely with regular checkups. Dr. Chin has become like family to us, and she's amazed by how well Lily has recovered from such a traumatic start to life. She's a true miracle baby, Dr. Chin tells us during every visit. Her resilience and strength are extraordinary. Lily has reached all her developmental milestones right on schedule for her adjusted age. She can sit up with support, she babbles constantly, and she's starting to show interest in solid foods. Her lungs are completely healthy now, with no lingering effects from the pneumonia she developed after Karen's attack. She sleeps through the night most of the time, giving Rachel and me the rest we desperately needed. Rachel has made significant progress in dealing with her trauma through intensive therapy and support groups for mothers who have experienced post-traumatic stress. She's learned that Karen's actions were not her fault and that she acted with incredible bravery and quick thinking to save our daughter's life. The guilt and self-blame have gradually been replaced with pride in her strength and maternal instincts. I used to replay that day over and over, thinking about what I could have done differently, Rachel told me recently as we watched Lily playing with her stuffed animals. But my therapist helped me realize that I did everything right. I protected our baby the best I could, and I got her the help she needed as fast as possible. We've moved to a new neighborhood called Sunnybrook Gardens, where the HOA is reasonable and the neighbors actually care about each other rather than trying to control each other. Our new house is smaller than our old one, but it feels like a palace compared to living under Karen's tyranny. The neighbors welcomed us with casseroles, baby gifts, and genuine friendship. Lily has already made friends with the other babies on our street. There's little Tommy Johnson who lives next door, 6-month-old Emma Rodriguez across the street, and baby Sarah Chin who was born just 2 weeks after Lily. The mothers in our neighborhood have formed a wonderful support group, and we often have playdates where the babies can interact and the parents can share experiences and advice. Our new neighbor, Mrs. Betty Williams, is a retired grandmother who absolutely adores Lily. She often comes over to help with babysitting and has become like a surrogate grandmother to our daughter. That little angel has been through so much, Mrs. Williams says while holding Lily. But look how strong and happy she is now. She's going to grow up to do amazing things. The contrast between our old neighborhood and our new one is like night and day. Instead of living in fear of fines and harassment, we can actually enjoy our home and our family. Lily can play outside without worrying about noise complaints. We can have friends over without measuring decibel levels. We can simply be a normal family living a normal life. Sometimes, when I'm tucking Lily into her crib at night, I think about how close we came to losing her. Karen's evil almost destroyed our miracle baby, but it also showed us how strong love can be in the face of unimaginable cruelty. Every day with Lily feels like a gift, and we never take a single moment for granted. The HOA at Maple Ridge Estates was completely dissolved after Karen's conviction and the revelation of years of abuse and harassment. A federal investigation found evidence of systematic violations of residents' civil rights, financial mismanagement, and corruption. The entire board was removed, and new leadership was elected with strict oversight and accountability measures. New policies were put in place to prevent future harassment of residents, including limits on fines, mandatory arbitration for disputes, and regular audits of HOA activities. The community has begun healing from years of fear and intimidation, with neighbors finally able to speak openly about their experiences under Karen's reign of terror. Many families who had been driven out of the neighborhood by Karen's harassment have filed civil lawsuits against her and the HOA. The legal settlements will likely bankrupt Karen's estate and provide compensation for the years of emotional trauma she inflicted on innocent families. The story of what happened to our family became national news, sparking conversations about HOA abuse and the need for better oversight of community organizations. Legislators in several states have introduced bills to prevent HOA harassment and protect residents' rights. Our experience has helped other families speak out about similar abuse and seek justice. I've received hundreds of letters from families across the country sharing their own stories of HOA harassment and thanking us for bringing attention to this widespread problem. Many people have told me that our story gave them the courage to stand up to their own neighborhood bullies and demand accountability. Karen Mitchell sits in a maximum security women's prison today, serving her 25-year sentence. She's been placed in protective custody for most of her incarceration because other inmates have made it clear that they don't tolerate child abusers. According to prison records, she's been written up multiple times for trying to control other inmates and attempting to establish herself as some kind of authority figure. Her appeals have all been denied, and she'll likely spend the rest of her life behind bars. The parole board has indicated that her complete lack of remorse and continued attempts to justify her crime make her an unsuitable candidate for early release. She'll be 75 years old before she's even eligible for parole consideration. Rachel and I have started a foundation called Lily's Light that provides support for families dealing with HOA harassment and abuse. We work with lawyers, therapists, and community organizers to help people document harassment, file complaints, and seek legal remedies. We've already helped over 50 families escape abusive HOA situations and find justice. The foundation also provides emergency assistance for families with premature babies who need specialized care. We know firsthand how expensive and stressful it can be to care for a preemie, and we want to help other families avoid the additional trauma of financial hardship during such a vulnerable time. Every year on February 15th, the anniversary of Karen's attack, we celebrate Lily's Survival Day, as a reminder of how precious life is and how important it is to protect innocent children from evil people. We spend the day doing things that Karen tried to prevent. Laughing loudly, playing music, having friends over, and simply enjoying being a happy family. Lily doesn't know the story of what happened to her yet, and we'll wait until she's older to explain why some people recognized her name in the news. For now, all she knows is love, safety, and the warmth of her family's embrace. She's a normal, happy baby who loves peekaboo, enjoys her bath time, and falls asleep to lullabies. As I write this, Lily is napping peacefully in her crib, completely safe and protected. Her little chest rises and falls with each healthy breath, her tiny hands are curled into perfect fists, and her face has the serene expression of a child who has never known fear or hatred. This is how all children should be able to sleep, safe, loved, and protected from the monsters that sometimes hide behind positions of authority. Karen Mitchell thought she could terrorize families with impunity. She believed her position as HOA president gave her the right to harass, intimidate, and ultimately try to murder an innocent baby. She was completely wrong about everything. Justice was served in the end, but the real victory is Lily's laughter echoing through our home every single day. She doesn't know how close she came to death, how one woman's hatred almost ended her life before it truly began, how many people fought to save her and bring her attacker to justice. All she knows is love, safety, and the unconditional protection of her parents. To anyone dealing with harassment from HOA officials, neighbors, or anyone else in a position of power, please don't stay silent like we initially did. Document everything, report threats to police immediately, and never underestimate how dangerous an unstable person can become when they feel their control is threatened. Our daughter survived by minutes and miracles, but others might not be so fortunate. And to those in positions of authority in their communities, remember that your role is to serve and protect the people you represent, not to intimidate and control them. The badge, the title, or the position doesn't make you superior to your neighbors. It makes you responsible for their safety and well-being. Karen Mitchell sits in a prison cell today, her life completely ruined by her own hatred, cruelty, and need for control. Meanwhile, our daughter grows stronger, happier, and more beautiful every day, surrounded by love and protected by justice. She's proof that good always triumphs over evil, even in the darkest storms. The woman who tried to destroy our family with her evil is gone forever, locked away where she can never hurt another child. But our miracle baby is here with us, safe and loved, growing into the amazing person she was always meant to be. Every day is a gift, every laugh is a victory, and every moment together is a celebration of life conquering death. Lily's story will always be one of survival, love, and justice. She's our miracle baby who survived the worst that humanity can offer and emerged stronger, healthier, and more loved than ever. Karen's hatred could not destroy the power of a parent's love, and evil could not extinguish the light of innocence. Our daughter is living proof that monsters can be defeated, that justice can prevail, and that love always wins in the end.